Hello and welcome to another episode of Crypto Time. My name's James Coughlan and I'm joined with my usual co-host, Antonio Shillingford. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing rather fine. How about yourself?
Yeah, good as always. Looking forward to jumping into two prominent subjects that have been cropping up in news and media. Before we do kick off, one thing I wanted to just do a quick reminder on was actually the Gravity Bitcoin banking ecosystem for Bitstocks, where you'll be able to actually trade in assets such as Bitcoin, BCH and BSV directly from a GBP pairing. We have a private beta stage which is currently running at this moment in time, and what we are asking is that we have individuals that are interested in being involved in that beta. We're going to have 100 slots in which you can be picked to actually be a part of it. So you can head over to bitstocks.com/gravity where you can register your interest for this service. I think it's a very, very exciting prospect, and I'm sure everybody's going to find it a very easy and great tool to use. So I'm going to be covering Bitmain and how they're going to be moving operations to rural Texas, and I know you've got an interesting subject to cover. Can you just fill in the listeners to exactly what that is going to be?
Yeah, so mine's on Hut 8. They are a miner, quite a large one as well, to be honest with you. And they have been buying up some data centers recently from a company that a lot of people will be familiar with within the crypto space.
Okay, nice. So without further ado, let's kick straight in. Let's look firstly at what's been happening with Bitmain. So Bitmain have been, no secret, they're a Beijing-based company who started out mining over in China. Things got a little bit more difficult, so they moved to different areas within China, ended up working out of Mongolia, or Inner Mongolia to be specific. Things have started to change in terms of what Mongolia wanted, in terms of the expectations of what miners were allowed to do. And now they've chosen to actually move operations elsewhere. Where they've chosen to move those operations is to a small town in Texas called Rockdale. In Rockdale, they've been offered some fantastic opportunities. Rockdale is very much known for the fact that it's connected to large amounts of energy and very many different suppliers of energy. So it's quite interesting to see that they're making that shift. But why are they making that shift is quite interesting. So CoinDesk have put out an article in relation to this matter. So let's cover a couple of the bullet points that they have there. Bitmain, the world's largest maker of Bitcoin mining computers, chose an old aluminium smelting plant in Rockdale, Texas for a Bitcoin mining operation to be set up. Now, as we said, there's obviously been some incentives there for them to do that, which we'll go into in a little bit later. Beijing company says the plant has initial power of 25 megawatts, but will be expanded to 50 megawatts and even got the potential to head all the way up to 300 megawatts. That's going to be seriously impressive. As it stands at the moment, they've got one long line of miners that are sitting within their actual setup, and that actually spans about 3 football pitches long. So we know obviously they're just really kind of ramping up in terms of what they're going to be doing. We've seen mining operations that they've had in the past, which are huge.
Yeah, and just off the top of my head, because I remember reading that article as well, to be honest with you, in terms of space, they have about 33,000 acres, yep. I believe it was. So they've got a decent amount to grow into. And I think what the narrative was of when they were coming out and putting those statements out there is that they wanted to be the biggest miner in the game and have the biggest mine in the game. So hence the amount of power that they could possibly need being 300 megawatt.
Yeah, and it certainly makes sense being the fact that they are the largest in terms of actually manufacturing hardware for the mining sector. So they're going to clearly have an advantage when it comes to pricing of actually getting this equipment into the warehouses themselves and obviously operating from that point. Now, when I wanted to talk about benefits, I didn't really want to talk about the benefits in terms of how it's going to work with the mining side of things. Mining is what mining is. It's does what it says on the tin in essence. But what I wanted to talk about is why the move has gone to Texas. Now, what we can look at is for good things to be set up around this. Now, obviously, places in Texas, specifically Rockdale, a very small kind of town within the state of Texas.
Yeah,
and within that town. Yeah, exactly. And with this, what they're trying to do is obviously create jobs. Now, where they've gone to is actually, like I said, a smelting plant, which now is no longer in use. Now, there would have been hundreds of people that had hundreds of jobs at that plant. This opens up a massive window for obviously the economy of that part of Texas, which is fantastic to see. And I think this is something which has been massive across the board, is that it's not just the case of, are the energy prices cheap? Is this going to be the place that we're going to set up? It's also what benefits can we glean from actually being in that area? Can we work with local government, the local mayor, if it were, to ensure that actually that the town's being produced in the right way and things are moving forward in the correct way? And I think these are things that Bitmain can certainly bring to that town. They're a very large company. company with a lot of money behind them, and they can certainly help push the town forward in terms of their development. So I imagine that's part of the deal as well.
Because from memory, so they wanted to start up schools, an education program with the local town on educating people on what blockchain technology really is. Let's hope that they really know, but
they're not going to be talking about the wrong Bitcoin, are they?
Yeah.
So look, these are all the things that are there. I think this is really positive, obviously, for Rockdale in terms of the town, and also it's interesting to see how all of these different areas that suddenly were fantastic for mining suddenly become a little bit more difficult because they've decided for whatever reason they're going to throw up certain barriers, whereas obviously Texas are letting those barriers down and letting people in. Now, do I think this is going to be long-term sustainable? Yes, I do. Reason why I think that is because obviously they've worked well with obviously the state of Texas to ensure that they're going to be pushing Texas forward, like as I said, with jobs, with utility for these individuals that are out there, and that's something that's very important for any town that's growing up, and it's a reason why Bitmain won't have to leave that area if things start to change, in my personal opinion, which I think is interesting. So is there anything else you wanted to add to that subject?
No, but what I'm actually going to do instead is I'm pretty much going to merge my subject into your subject.
Cool, sounds good.
Because they are very much the same topics.
Yep.
So just going off of what we were just saying in terms of the politics around actually creating the mine.
Yep.
Now, of course, we know the majority of hashing power that is currently on the Bitcoin network is out in China.
Yep.
To be particular, a lot of it has moved to Mongolia as well. Now we're starting to see that change, because if you think of Bitcoin mining and how it operates, and you've got to think of whatever country is providing the power, providing infrastructure, what benefits do they get out of it? So we've seen in Mongolia a lot of these companies moving out, Bitmain being one of them as well. Of course, not fully, but they are definitely on the way. Because what a lot of these companies were doing, these mining companies, is some of them were lying, saying that they're data centers. So they're setting up as a data center as opposed to telling the complete truth that they're really and truly mining Bitcoin.
It makes it very easy to be attacked like that, doesn't it? Because you're just opening yourself up to a whole world of problems because you're just simply not being transparent, which is what blockchain is all about.
Exactly. And with that, you're only going to get away with it for so long.
Exactly.
And that's what we're starting to see to break out. So in Mongolia, what's currently kind of happening, it is happening, but it hasn't been completely clarified. But so the initial companies that are, of course, lying about them just being data centers and not mining Bitcoin, they're currently getting kicked out because they do pull huge amounts of power from their national grid, no matter what type of power they're using.
Just on that, before you do go on, one thing that's important to remember around that as well is in Mongolia, they use roughly 80% what we would call dirty energy and only around about 20% clean energy. So that totally supports obviously what you're saying, because actually if, for example, we're looking for this greener planet and we're looking to do things better going forward, it's something that Mongolia simply can't offer miners at this moment in time as well. So I think it's a bit of a two-way street. Another thing which is key to what you were saying as well was about the certificates that they offer in Mongolia. What they were doing was basically offering tax incentives to anybody that was setting up operations there, because again, you're bringing money into their local community, you're bringing jobs into that community, and you're doing all these weird and wonderful things around it. But what the problem is these agreements were supposed to last for 10 years. Now all of a sudden we find that actually there've been some changes and now people are leaving. So what I mean by what I was saying around Texas as well is that they're actually investing into the actual state itself, and they're investing into the towns and infrastructure. Difference being there is they've got a lot better reason to be kept there rather than actually to leave. The fact that you said, education's come into the pot, you've got the fact that there's going to be jobs on offer. These are all important factors for those people going forward. And the fact that Mongolia can't actually commit and continue on with these 10-year contracts with the incentives that they had just shows you that actually, do you really want to be going into a jurisdiction which potentially could be unstable? Because these are no joke. They're investing hundreds of millions to get these data centers set up, and then you could find out that actually a rule has changed, and actually now you have to look elsewhere around the planet to actually place that mining equipment. Now you've got this huge problem where you have to ship all of this mining equipment to another jurisdiction.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense on why these countries are kicking up a fuss, because Bitcoin's a global network, meaning that none of these countries own Bitcoin. So with them expending all of their natural resources or renewable resources, whatever way you want to put it, and it's these countries expending it, what they're doing is providing this power to these Bitcoin miners, these data centers, and then these data centers are then using that power to, of course, hash the algorithm. Yeah. Now, whilst that's happening, is what benefit do the country get out of it? Not much, to be completely honest with you.
If any, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Other than the jobs for certain people that are going to work there. But in terms of like infrastructure, they're not building on it.
Yeah. And with these companies, what they're actually doing, a lot of them, because they want cheap electricity prices, so they're bypassing government and creating direct contracts with whoever it is that is supplying the electricity.
Yeah. Handshake under the table, brown envelope, that kind of stuff goes on.
And of course, with that being said, you're getting much cheaper prices. Much cheaper prices, meaning you can be more competitive, you can expand your mine. And we know that the halvening's coming, so a lot of these miners are very sensitive on their operating prices and how much it actually costs them to generate a Bitcoin at the moment. So a lot of them are greatly trying to reduce how much it actually costs them to do so. And of course, with that being said, they're taking some shortcuts here and there. All of that is now getting stamped out. We're starting to see it from Mongolia. So they're pretty much stamping that out at the moment, getting rid of the majority of companies that are operating in not a transparent way, but then that will eventually feed on to the other companies that are doing it in a transparent way, just because the country isn't really getting too much from it. Now,
just before you go into that, Mongolia as well, which was interesting to hear from quite a lot that I've been reading around it, was not happy, as you said, about the fact that, you know, the infrastructure is not building on what they're doing at this moment in time. So what I believe they're trying to do, being quite an undeveloped area, what they're trying to do and what they want to do is investment that comes in will benefit the actual area more than just giving out jobs. What they're saying is they want, for example, if someone was going to set up with places where people could be educated and things like that, it's only going to strengthen that. And it just supports the same thing that we were talking about with Texas. If, for example, Bitmain had gone in there in the start and actually invested into infrastructure in Mongolia and also invested into schools and different things like that, maybe they wouldn't be having the issue that they've had today. So I think that, you know, they've learnt lessons and they've moved forward, and that's why we've ended up in the situation that we're in today, because they can see that actually investing in the small towns, investing in their community and making that a better place is only going to give their standing a much more cemented set. And I think that's very, very key and important to this point.
Yeah, and because of all of these particular reasons, and we've got the halvening event coming up and the price slump that has happened, we've got all of these people reshuffling their companies, but we're also going to have reshuffling of how many people, well, how much hashing power is controlled by particular companies that have been in that position for a while now. So we're starting to see that reshuffling happen. Quite a large miner that is out there at the moment is Hut 8, and they are taking very positive steps on drumming down their expenses, making sure that they're organized and efficient as possible. So much so they've actually been investing heavily recently. So they actually bought 9 data centers from Bitfury to start really pushing forward on how much hash power they really have. Now, just to give you some figures behind what we were mentioning earlier on the power expense that they actually have to a lot of these different particular countries. Now, the 9 data centers were upgraded to include 12.6 petahash Bitfury Clark ASICs chips. The additional petahash brought Hut 8's total maximum operating capacity across all operations to nearly 963 petahashes and 109.4 megawatts at full capacity. So 109.4 megawatts of energy that is needed to create that much petahash.
And just to put that in perspective, when we were talking about Bitmain, we were talking about how it was 3 football fields worth of a straight line of basically miners, right? When you start talking about 100, you can only see how this has become a very, very large space that they're using, which is really interesting to see.
And of course, that is all going to be pulled from the energy provided by whatever area that you're in. So that's why it's very, very important to locate yourself in the correct place, not just that to adhere to all your surroundings and make sure that you're not just taking and giving back.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really nice place to wrap this episode up. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you are enjoying the content that's coming out of Bitstocks TV, please hit that like, subscribe and notification button so you can see the latest and greatest coming from Bitstocks. And as always, we're available to listen to through Spotify and also iTunes. So thank you so much for watching, guys. See you soon.
Peace and love.